You open your bank account and you don't close it immediately. You just stare. $5,000. Not enough to change your life, but too much to ignore. And in that moment, it stops being money. It becomes pressure, quiet, invisible, sitting inside your mind. Not excitement, not relief, something heavier than both. Because now it exists as a responsibility without instructions. No one told you what to do at this stage. No one explained what small capital is supposed to feel like when it starts taking shape in your life. So you do what most people do. You freeze and call it caution. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Money like this never stays neutral. It either starts working for you or starts quietly losing its meaning while sitting still. And the worst part is, you won't notice it happening. At first, nothing changes. The number stays the same. The screen looks familiar. You feel safe, even proud, in a quiet way, like you've done something responsible. But safety is deceptive when it's not tested against time, because time doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to movement. Let's break this down in a way no one usually tells you. $5,000 sitting idle doesn't look like it's doing anything wrong. But inflation is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just slowly changes the value of everything around you. Groceries become slightly more expensive. Transport costs shift without warning. Small bills start feeling heavier over months, not days. And your money, it stays still, which means it's actually moving backwards in disguise. But here's where the psychology starts to matter more than the math. Because once you see that number, 5,000, you start building emotional rules around it. You stop thinking of it as flexible. You start treating it as fragile. Something that must not be touched. Not for learning, not for experimenting, not even for small calculated risks. And that's where life quietly narrows. You tell yourself you're being smart, but let's look at what that smartness actually looks like in real time. There's a moment, a simple one. You're scrolling late at night. You see a course, practical skill, something that could realistically improve your income over the next few months. It costs $150. You pause, not because it's expensive, but because it touches the money you've emotionally locked away. You think, I'll decide later, and you close it. Same week, something else appears, a tool, a setup, something small that could make your work faster, better, more valuable. Another $200. Again, you hesitate. Again, you protect the $5,000. Again, you choose safe. But here's what you don't calculate. You are not just avoiding spending money. You are avoiding exposure to change. And slowly, without noticing, your decisions start forming a pattern. Not one big mistake, just repeated hesitation that always feels reasonable in the moment. Now let me show you what this actually looks like in real life. There is a person. Let's call it you, because it usually is. You wake up thinking today might be the day you start improving things. You've been holding that $5,000 for months. You've read advice, watched videos, saved ideas. You know what you could do. But knowing is not the problem. Starting is. You open a learning platform again. You hover over something that could genuinely change your earning potential. You feel that small internal resistance. Not fear exactly, but discomfort. Like stepping out of something familiar, even though that familiar place is not taking you anywhere. So you delay again. You tell yourself you need clarity, but clarity never arrives in stillness. It only arrives through movement, and movement is what you keep postponing. Now here's where it gets worse, because life outside your account is not waiting for your confidence to catch up. Prices move, skills evolve. Opportunities don't pause because you're thinking carefully. Someone else sees the same opening you saw, but they don't hesitate as long. They don't protect the money the same way. They use it differently, and slowly, quietly, the gap starts forming. Not between rich and poor, but between movement and delay, between action and overthinking, between building and preserving. And that gap compounds faster than most people realize, because $5,000 is not just capital. It's a decision-making test, a small mirror showing how you behave when you are given limited resources and unlimited uncertainty. Now let's talk about the emotional part no one likes admitting. The longer that money sits untouched, the more powerful it becomes over you. Not financially, psychologically. It starts defining your boundaries. You begin to think, I can't risk this. Then, I shouldn't touch this. Then eventually, this is all I have. And once that belief forms, the money stops being a tool. It becomes identity, a fragile sense of stability you refuse to disturb. But stability that cannot move is not stability. It's stagnation, wearing a comforting label. And stagnation always feels safe, right before it starts feeling like limitation. There is another moment most people experience but rarely talk about. You sit one evening, you calculate, you think about what you could have done over the past few months, the course you didn't take, the tool you didn't buy, the small risk you didn't test. None of them were huge decisions individually, but together they form a pattern of not starting. And that's when the realization quietly hits. The money didn't disappear, but something else did. Time that could have been used to build momentum. Now here's the uncomfortable system-level truth. Banks are not designed to multiply your thinking. They are designed to hold your money in place, safe, predictable, still. And while that sounds responsible, it also removes pressure from you to make decisions, which feels good, until you realize pressure is sometimes what forces growth. Because without pressure, most people don't move. They wait, they plan, they delay, and they mistake delay for protection. But the system doesn't reward waiting. It rewards direction, even imperfect direction. Now imagine two versions of you over time. One keeps protecting the $5,000, treating it like something sacred, untouched, safe. Years pass. The number remains familiar, but life around it changes. The other version uses a portion, not recklessly, not blindly, but intentionally. A course, a tool, a small experiment. Some things work, some don't, but something important happens. They start moving, and movement creates something money sitting still never can. Feedback, real-world learning, real-world correction, real-world growth. Now here is where everything converges. Because this was never a story about $5,000. It was a story about what you become when you are given just enough money to feel responsible, but not enough to feel free. And that space is where most people stay stuck for years. Not because they lack opportunity, but because they confuse preservation with progress. So the final question is not what you should do with $5,000. The real question is simpler and harder. Are you protecting your money from risk, or protecting yourself from the discomfort of becoming someone who actually uses it? Because in the end, the biggest cost of that $5,000 is not inflation. It is the version of you that keeps waiting for the perfect moment and slowly learns how to live without ever starting.